Hello lazy students, Miss Marsh here. So this is part 2 of how to complete the square. Please make sure you watch part 1 before you watch part 2. So basically I can complete the square. What now? So how are you going to solve using this? So completing the square, it takes a couple of steps and it's a long process. But it's the same steps over and over and over to solve for each problem. Very first thing you're always going to want to do is you're going to want to make sure that the a term, or basically whatever's in front of the x squared, is a 1. In this case, he is a 1. That's good. We don't have to worry about that otherwise. So every time we start completing the square problem, we're going to make sure there's a 1 here. Your next step is this c term, the one without an x attached. You're going to want to subtract it or add it to the other side. So I'm going to subtract this 1 to both sides. I'm going to be left with x squared plus 4x. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a plus blank. If I do plus blank on this side, though, I need to also plus blank on that side, because if I add to one side, I got to add to the other. Now, this is where that completing the square part comes in, where we were figuring out what's going to fill in the blank. So, I need to do 4 divided by 2 and square that. So 4 divided by 2 is 2. 2 squared is 4. So 4 is what I'm going to fill in my blank. Now 4 is over here and 4 is over there. Blank is on the same side, on both sides is the same number. Now let's rewrite this as 2 factors, or the condensed version really. So I know it's going to be an x, and 2 was when I would divide it, so it's going to be 2. Then I'm going to steal this sign right here. Well, that's a plus. So it's going to be x plus 2 squared. Then negative 1 plus 4, that's 3, if I add those two together. So now what I can do is I can solve. We've seen this before. So since this is squared, let's square root both sides. So a squared and the square root are going to cancel out. We'll be left with x plus 2 equals plus or minus the square root of 3. Now, get x alone, so we got to subtract 2. So I get x on this side. Now remember, when you subtract to the other side and you have this plus or minus, he's going to go in the front. So it's going to be negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 3 for my final answer to complete the square. Let's try it again. So my leading coefficient, aka the number that's in front of the x squared, is 1 again. So we don't have to worry about that yet. So my next step, subtract the c term to the other side. So I'm left with x squared minus 12x plus blank equals negative 4 plus blank. Now, let's fill in blank. I need negative 12 divided by 2 squared. Negative 12 divided by 2 is negative 6. Gotta square him. So that is 36, right? So I got 36 on both sides. Wonderful. Now let's condense this side into the 2 squared, okay? So x, well, 12 divided by 2 gave me a negative 6. So I know I'm going to have a 6, and then since this is a negative, I get to have a negative in the middle. Now let's double check here. If I remultiply this out, I'll get negative 12x plus 36. That's how I make sure that I actually get the right answer when I would multiply this back out. Then negative 4 plus 36, that is 32. So now I have solved this problem before. Let's square root now. Square and square root are gone. I'm left with x minus 6 equals plus or minus the square root of 32. Before I add that 6 over, let's break down the square root of 32. Well, I know 32 has 16 and 2 in it, so square root of 16 I know is 4. So I can translate or rewrite this as x minus 6 equals plus or minus 4 square roots of 2. Now let's add that 6 over. So I'm going to get x equals 6 plus or minus 4 square roots of 2. And that's my final answer. Now, what if there's a number in front of x squared? What you're going to do, you're going to get rid of that number. Basically, you're going to divide by the a term. This one, in case, didn't give me any gross numbers. Sometimes you'll get fractions. That's just going to make your problem a little harder. But this one, it's not too bad. So now I get to continue along my way, just like what we were doing before. So I got x squared plus 4x plus blank equals negative 7 plus blank. Now, let's see this. Let's complete that square. So I got 4 divided by 2 squared, aka 2 squared, which is 4. So my blank is 4. So now, condensing this over here, I know that to be x plus 2 squared, because 2 plus 2 gives me 4, and 2 times 2 gives me 4. So negative 7 plus 4, that's negative 3. Let's square root both sides here. You're left with x plus 2 equals plus or minus the square root of negative 3. Negative 3. It can't have a negative under a square root. I is going to come to the party. So this is the square root of negative 1 and the square root of 3. So I can rewrite that as x plus 2 equals plus or minus I square roots of 3. Square root of 3, that is I can't break that down anymore. So subtract my 2 to both sides. My answer, x equals negative 2 plus or minus I square roots of 3. Just some steps to complete the square. So if you want to take these down for your own knowledge, so you kind of have an idea here, make sure the leading coefficient is 1. That's our first step. Number 2, you're going to move the c to the other side using addition or subtraction, whichever you need to do. Then complete the square on the left and add to both sides. So basically, you're going to figure out what's blank. Then you're going to solve, and then don't forget that plus or minus, alright, when you square root. And that's the end of this video. See you later, Sabers!